How are you?
I'm good. Life is good up here in Maine and starting to hit 50 degrees. So we're excited. A little bit different than California and what you guys have. But up here, it's moving in the right direction weather-wise. And business is good. So we're blessed and excited for the future for sure.
Okay, so you're now the CEO of Maine Oxygen. So what was your path in the gas and welding industry? Let's start with that.
I graduated college in 2017, finance degree, George Mason in DC. And I always knew that I wanted to be in sales. I love people. I loved communicating to people. And I just love the competition and the game of it as well. So came out of school and I started selling Xerox copiers door to door. So a lot different than in the gas and welding industry. I had Maine Oxy in the back of my mind, but I really wanted to go out and get some other experiences first, kind of see what else I could learn out there before joining the team up here. And so started selling copiers door to door. After 7 months of doing that, learned very quickly that was something I did not want to do for the rest of my life. Was very in and out of that. And then I actually found an opportunity to work for a healthcare startup outside of DC. And I love that job. It was a lot of fun working with healthcare companies. We did analytics with different survey data that they had. So I cold called hospitals and health systems all across the East Coast. Ended up being able to manage some people during my time there as well. And then I made the decision to jump up to Maine Oxy. I did have another job after that where I was in sales, but that was just a placeholder until I could figure out the specifics to move up here. But it was all in sales. And coming in here, started in March of 2020, an exciting time to start a new job and move to somewhere where you don't know anybody. But it was fun. I started in bulk sales, worked that for about a year, then got moved into a district manager position, overseeing 7 or 8 sales reps, performed well in that realm. Was able to hit 115% quota as a district, put in tons of new bulk tanks, grew our new CO2 market, and did well in that. And then the opportunity arose to where we knew Dan was going to be retiring, and they were grooming me for the ability to take over for him in October of last year. So with Dan stepping down after being with the company for, I think, 36 years, which is amazing, we were able to step in and take over. And it's a little unique at Maine Oxy because a lot of these businesses that I've met and I know, the Earl Becks, the Norcos, the West Airs, it's like second, third, fourth generation of the same family. Where with Maine Oxy, the Albisons started in the 1920s, 3 generations in, the 4th generation didn't want it. And he didn't want to sell to another corporation because he knew they were going to come in, cut some of his people. He was very passionate and loved the people that he had. So he came in and sold to Dan Guerin, the current CEO. Dan wanted a partner, brought my dad in. And then that's how we're able to work our way up here and get involved in the industry.
Whoa, I did not know that. I thought you were like 4th generation. That is really cool.
Yeah, it is. Because what's funny is my dad started his own gas and welding distributorship in Reading, Pennsylvania. He started with Air Products in the early 80s, worked in the corporate world for either Air Products or BOC, which was called Messer at that time. And so working with those guys, started his own distributorship, grew it from 200,000 in sales to 140 million in sales in 20 years and sold it. So he did very well for himself. And then that's where it was like, hey, he didn't have anything to pass along, but he had an opportunity for us. And we're in the stages of buying out the current of my dad and also the other owner, Dan Guerin, as well.
Let's pretend people that are listening to this don't understand what the gas and welding industry is. Can you give an example of how gas is used in a certain application that the average person probably uses or sees or experiences?
Yeah, so I know we were talking about CO2 earlier. So, a lot of people know, there's carbon dioxide in beer. Another gas that's actually used in that process is nitrogen. And so with the CO2 shortages out there, people not being able to get the product, that CO2 market isn't really growing from a production standpoint, but a usage standpoint with all the cannabis opening up across the country, the demand is about 10 to 15% higher a year, but the production is anywhere from 0 to 3%. And so what we're telling our brewery customers, and what's actually starting to expand across the country, is using nitrogen in either the soda or the brewing process. Pepsi actually has a nitrogen Pepsi that they brand now. And so up here, one of the largest independent breweries in America just happens to be in Portland, Maine, Allagash Brewing, fantastic people. And they actually use our nitrogen to help can the CO2, because as they're running it through the canning line, they're putting the lids on it. They want to keep as much oxygen out of it as possible, because the more oxygen that's in it, the shorter the shelf life is. So they dose it with nitrogen, get all of the oxygen out of the can, and then seal it. So it lasts for a lot longer. And actually, the once you get the less oxygen, the less oxygen that is in the beer, the longer the shelf life is. So that's why they use our nitrogen in that space. And we're actually seeing it being adopted in multiple breweries across the country at all sizes as well. So that's something too, if you're ever at Allagash Brewing in Portland, Maine, and you see a huge, massive tank, says Routerman on it, says Maine Oxy on it, that's right there. So I think that's cool being able to show my friends, hey, this is one of my favorite breweries on the planet, and they're a customer of ours. So I think it's really unique about what we do, because our new slogan that we just came out with is skills that power our communities. Because at the end of the day, it's the gas that we provide that moves society forward, like what you were just saying.
Yes, I love that. Wow, well done. I'm sure that took a lot of brainstorming to come up with that one, but it's the nail on the head.
Wish I could take credit for it, but it was a marketing firm that we worked with. So I will always give credit where credit's due. So they did a good job, worked in tandem with them, but they were an awesome company to work with for sure.
Oh, that's great. And thank you for that little Ratterman plug on the tank. I love Allagash so much. Okay, I just have so many questions for you. So now you're like this like young CEO of Maine Oxygen. And if people don't know Maine Oxygen, it's, I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, the largest independent supplier in the Northeast. You guys are everywhere. Jake, my husband, is from New England. And every time we're back home in his hometown, his friend who works at the dentist, his friend that's a welder, his friend that's owns a restaurant, they all have products that say Maine Oxygen on them, which is really cool to see. But so what is that like right now? Are you feeling like an insane amount of pressure? Are you feeling ready for this role? What's going on?
Yeah, so 6 months in, it's definitely had its challenges. And I think being a young leader, you're in the same position, a young leader in yourself, and it's not like I was here for 10 years before I took over. It was, I came in and had to learn on the fly, had to keep learning and keep developing. But a lot of it had to do with the decisions I made early on. I was always, even in college, I was always reading like a book a month, a book every other month. And I had actually like an SEO marketing business on the side. So from 22 to 25, I worked probably 80 hours a week. I worked from 8 to 5 on Saturdays on like my side business. So I was always hustling, I was always working, and I was always learning and growing. And where most of my friends, I love them to death, they just made different decisions. They were, hey, 9 to 5, I want to enjoy my life, I want to travel, I want to do all that stuff. So that's where kind of I feel like I was uniquely positioned just due to my experiences and my choices that I made earlier on in my career, just to develop myself, go into conferences, and really investing in my own skill sets early on. And so that aspect has served me extremely well up here. And then now it's just trying to learn everything about the industry. But my goal and my skill sets is what are my strengths and what can I focus on first and foremost? And then how can I hire other people with industry experience? And then we combine ideas, thought processes, systems to make sure that it's great for our customers and it's good for us internally. So it's a win-win. And so to answer your question, it's definitely been a lot. It's been going well and it's been a lot of fun, and we've already made some dramatic changes in the past 6 months.
That is incredible. I know growing up, my dad, some words of advice that he always gave me was that you don't know what you don't know. So lean on the people that are around you and be open to ideas and new thoughts, and don't be defensive towards them. How has that been for you? I know this industry is very niche and people have been around for a really long time. How has that experience been at Maine Oxy?
Yeah, I definitely think it's 2 or 3 pronged approach there, because that's a really good point. My dad's been in the industry for 40 plus years. He goes to GATA, he knows your dad, he knows all these other people who've been doing it for so long. So it's, I think, surrounding yourself with people who've been doing this for a long time as a council of advisors. And I think it's healthy to have people who have different opinions. Like my dad has been in the corporate side and independent, so can relate to both sides. Pat Heffernan, one of our board members, helped take Praxair's cylinder division group for the Americas from like $100 million to over $1 billion annually in sales. He's been in the corporate world his whole life. And then you have Dan Guerin, our other board member, former CEO, who's been with the company, knows the employees, knows the customers for 35 years. So having people with those different sets of opinions are great for me to bounce ideas off of and make my own decisions. And it's really what I'm obsessed with is, because another brewery up here has a phrase where they says using the past as a catalyst for the future. And so I think it's respecting what Maine Oxy made Maine Oxy great, brought us to this point, but also having an understanding of is just because what got us here isn't going to get us to the next steps, but taking the pieces that are going to help us get us to the next steps and combine it with modern practices, modern ideas, modern technologies to move us to that next phase. And it's just constant feedback from employees, constant ideas, guys who've been here 30, 40 years, getting their thoughts and making sure that we're all moving in the right direction forward for sure.
And what do you see like the future looking like for Maine Oxy or for our industry?
Yeah, I see for us up here, because just knowing the industry over time, it was so many small independents, and now it's consolidated so much into a lot of regional players. In California, you have Westia, and to the northwest, you have Norco, you have Roberts Oxygen, and now the Mid-Atlantic down to like Virginia, Carolinas, even Florida. So for us, I think it's just really doing everything we can to dominate our region of New England, to grow, develop relationships with other distributors, and just to continue to move ourselves forward and just grow as much as we can, but not grow too fast. Like when I started here in 2020, we were 50 million. This year, we'll probably do 80, 82 million. So in 3 years, we've grown $30 million, which is significant. It's fantastic. But it also causes a lot of stress, especially in an environment where we've had trucks on orders for 3 years because they can't make them fast enough. So it's just trying to make sure that as we continue to grow, we are scaling our system, scaling our people, and making the proper investments to support that. So that's what our future is looking, just continuous growth in the New England area for the foreseeable future.
I think a lot of companies right now are going through growing pains because to survive during COVID, you needed to do something bigger and better than what you were doing before. And then that just like leapfrogged companies into this like huge growth path. But for someone that's working at a company like Maine Oxygen that's growing that fast, what do you think, let's say a young professional, what do you think is the best thing for them to do to, one, excel in their career, and two, support that company?
Reflecting on some of my early career mistakes and kind of decisions that I made, I would say the biggest thing is obviously professional development. How can I grow in my own role and professionally outside of Maine Oxy? And then also just trying to understand and focus on is what can I do to provide the team and move the team forward? Because it's all about us culture. Like my goal here is to try and create a culture of that's not my job, I'm not going to do that. That's not acceptable. This is all of our jobs. This is all of our responsibilities. And if you want to grow, if you want to do more, then you need to also step up and show that as well. And so it's all about giving our people opportunities, hearing what they want to do. We recently implemented something in the last year and a half where we actually pay for our employees' education if they want to get it up to a certain amount. So just partnering with them and having those conversations early on in their career, saying, hey, what do you want to do? Where do you want to be? And then understanding if you can match passion with talent, I think you can go a long ways in your career for sure.
Absolutely. And then that also allows you to find the right seat on the bus at the company because you're exposing yourself to so many different areas of expertise, or you're just growing so much that you now realize what you're good at, what maybe is your weakness, and you can find that proper seat. And then I also think like the way that you guys are investing in your employees to get education or new ideas, whatever, that's just going to foster that growth because people aren't afraid to come with new ideas to the table. They're thinking about how can we better this work environment and grow at Maine Oxygen. And that's some really cool stuff. That's really difficult, but it sounds like you're mastering it pretty well.
Yeah, we're doing our best. We're always in the market for the best possible talent. Like one of the books that we're reading right now, I get together with our senior managers every other Wednesday, and we're reading a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. He was a Stanford research professor, and he, for 11 years, studied companies from 1960 to 1990, and he figured out who grew, who didn't, and why, and he broke it down into pretty much 6 overall concepts. And that second concept, the first one is making sure that you have level 5 leaders at the top. Second concept is who do you want on the bus? What seat do you want them in that bus? And then who do you want off the bus? And that has pretty much been on my obsession the past 6 months, is finding out who do we want on this bus currently? What seat do we want them on? Certain people we've moved around in different positions because their skill set, instead of, hey, maybe an outside sales, maybe they're better inside. Hey, maybe instead of this management role, maybe they should take on this management role. And so it's just making sure that you have fantastic people and create training programs, development programs, idea sharings. A lot of the stuff that you guys already do at Ratterman, we're learning from you as well, but to apply to our business and making sure that we're constantly developing that pool of talent.
No, I appreciate that. George will love that compliment. But yeah, I think the hard work pays off in regards to that. So it's funny, at Ratterman, we also will pick like a book, and as a company, we'll all read it and then break out into smaller teams and really dissect it. So it's really neat to hear that you all do that as well. What are like your top 3 books that you would recommend?
So that's always a hard question because I love reading. I do everything that I can. I would just say it really depends on what position you're in and where you're at in your life and where you're trying to go. I would just say for anybody entering management for the first time, the 3 books that I think are the most important are Good to Great. I'd honestly put up there. I think it's extremely important to have that overarching structure on how do you want to structure the organization? How do you have your strategy for your path forward? Second book is Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's my favorite book, one of my favorite books of all time, because it really talks about how to communicate with people, how to interact with individuals, and how to connect with them. And at the end of the day, I think leadership is all about connection. Influence is all about connection. And the more you learn how to properly connect with other people, the more you're going to be able to influence, the better discussions you're going to have, and the farther you're going to be able to go. And then the other one, too, is David Marquette, Turn the Ship Around. So he went in to a 200-man submarine, which was the lowest rated submarine in all of the Navy. It was the highest turnover, worst performance, awful group of people from what he heard. And then he went in there, and what he found is he said, listen, these guys just feel like they're beaten down. It's a top-down approach. How can we create structures, programs to empower these people so they feel like they're a part of an overarching team and they're able to make decisions? And so that's the next book we're reading after Good to Great, is allowing people and how can we set up structures and processes so people feel like they're empowered to make decisions. Because instead of just having one general and 1,000 soldiers, now you have 1,000 generals who are prepped, who are thinking as managers, who are thinking that next level up. So they're trying to take in everything into consideration. So I think that's a fantastic book to read along with Good to Great.
Dang, you have this whole conversation is just like home run after home run of take home points. I'm going to read all 3 of those books by the time I see you in Philadelphia because they sound great.
They are fantastic.
So I have a question for you. I'm hosting that panel discussion at GATA about succession planning. Mm-hmm. And you're the successor for the CEO, and here you are. But you have 2 siblings, right? Yes, I do. So was that difficult for them to like choose who was going to fill that role, or did it just come down to skill sets? Yeah, I think just, Kelly is amazing at what she does. Her just turning 26 and the talent and the mindset that she has being in HR, she literally came in, no offense to the previous individual that we had, she was great as well. But Kelly helped take it to another level because she could connect with that younger generation and just fresh perspectives, new ideas. So it's really just, I'm a sales guy. I'm a connector. I love working with people, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done at the end of the day. So I think my skill set's better suited this role specifically. And then Kelly's skill set's best suited working with operations, working with productivity, safety, HR. My brother's skill set's working in finance, working on a real estate portfolio. And so for me, I have zero attention to detail. I'm very pie in the sky, up here kind of guy. I don't care about the details. Let's just get it done. My sister on the back end is just, no, this is really important as well. So I don't really like to think of it as titles. At the end of the day, I'm here to serve our employees. I'm here to service our people. And it's all about how can we work together to move the company forward and help our employees achieve their dreams within our overall dream of Maine Oxy. And so that's really our thought process. That's our path forward. And I'd be lying to you if I told you it was easy. I'd be lying to you if I told you we didn't fight every once in a while. We definitely do. But there's a respect and there's an understanding that at the end of the day, we have our arguments, we have our discussions, but it's mostly because we're just passionate about what we do and we care. And it's all about saying, hey, after we cool off, hey, let's talk, let's figure this out, and then let's move forward. And that's really what we handle it and how we handle it as well. Yes. I think it's really neat that it's a common theme throughout this conversation of finding people's strengths and then just getting them in the right seat and then doing what's best for the team at the company. And that's just such a strong culture to have, and it's only going to continue to grow for you guys. That's excellent. You already gave advice for young professionals, unless you have more you want to tap into.
Yeah, well, one thing, because I was talking about it to a friend this weekend, because I was big in my fraternity, president of my chapter at George Mason, where I went. And sometimes I talk to some of the younger students. And I think, because we're in the welding and gas industry, but I think the more industry that you better, even if it's outside of the welding and gas industry, it's all about the end of the day, making sure what industry do I want to be in and what do I want to focus on? Because it's one thing to move within an industry. It's another thing to have to learn a new industry every single time. Like I was in copiers the first thing, then I was in healthcare, and then I was in education. And it was like, okay, what can I take from my previous job? I can't take any of the connections because no one in healthcare also works in education and vice versa. So I think it's more because it's like our industry is so tight knit. Like everybody knows each other. It's very close, which is one of the reasons I love it. So even if you move within the industry, you still have a reputation. And when you build a reputation within an industry, then that's when you start creating your own brand, your own image, and then that's when people start reaching out to you. And so I think that's extremely important for people to pick an industry and then pick a field within that industry that you're passionate about, that you're excited about, and then continue to educate yourself on it. 30 minutes to an hour today, read a book, read something, an industry packet, know something about your profession, and really just making sure that you're driving yourself to learn as much as you can, not only about the industry, but about your own role within that as well. And that takes a few years. Like I try and tell guys coming out of college, I said, spend the first 3 or 4 years trying every type of job, every type of industry that you can. And then once you find your fit, just dive straight into it.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with that. I think too, it's interesting, like doing these podcast interviews and talking with people that are either young professionals or else someone that's been in our industry for 30, 40 years. It seems like the success comes when they start focusing on their strengths and then just making their strength the best it can possibly be. And I know growing up, that was advice my dad would always say to us is, yeah, you can go spend hours on the things you're not so good at. But what if you spend an hour every single day on your strengths? Like how amazing would you be at the end of each year? I think it relates to what you're saying. What advice would you have in our industry, in the gas and welding industry, or what opportunities do you think are maybe not being tapped the way they could be, or just a new opportunity for the gas and welding industry? It can be related to day-to-day business, or it could be related to an application, like, I don't know, making something up, CO2, or it could be marketing.
Yeah, for me, honestly, and this is something we've started diving into a lot more, and this is something all of us have, but are we really going in depth with it as we could, is retail. So many people are buying online. With COVID, we were locked indoors. We couldn't go anywhere for so long. And I feel like in an age of digitalization, people are craving that human experience. And so I think if you can really curtail your retail operations, Bob Ewing said it at the last God event, there's a grain of our industry. There's so many people who are starting to retire and all that talent's walking out the door. And I think with retail in the next 5 to 10 years specifically, because that's when most people are going to be retiring, who were part of my dad's generation, guys in their 50s and 60s, finding people who have a ton of welding experience is going to be very difficult to come by. So if you're going to be able to somehow set up your retail experience where people feel welcome, they feel like they're talking to an expert and a consultant, they're not just being sold, but they actually feel like they're buying something, they're going through a process. And I think if you can really revitalize that retail, focus with your marketing departments, working with retail to drive more traffic into your stores, I think that will do wonders. Because a lot of the people that I talk to in the industry and outside of the industry as well, they've seen more retail growth in the past 2 to 3 years than they've ever seen. Because coming out of COVID, people are itching to go out and talk more. And so I think that's actually something that I don't really hear a lot of people focusing on, which if they did, I think could really help take their business to the next level, because you create that word of mouth experience. People start talking about you, driving SEO traffic online, marketing, everything. I think that is extremely important. And then I think for independents, the best thing the advice that I can give is, as you grow over time, is just what can you do to partner with other independents and become more independent yourself? Because the more you control and the less you rely upon outside factors, the better your company's going to be. And that's a selling point. Like for us, we were not really in the CO2 business that much at all, like bulk or micro bulk delivering to like breweries, cannabis operations. We weren't in that area at all. We had to rely upon another independent in the area to do all that work for us. So we actually decided to buy our own transports, pick up at the source, and then deliver to customers. And we went from, in now 3 years in the CO2 market, we thought we were only going to be able to pick up 1 load a week. We're picking up 7 to 8 loads a week. We're doing almost well over 1 million pounds a month of CO2 in our first 3 years. And we went from having probably almost like a 0% share of the bulk CO2 space in Maine. Now we probably have a 30-35% share up here and growing in other areas as well. And so too, going off of the CO2 as well. And that's, I think, the beauty of owning your own assets and transports and being able to pick up is that's a selling point. We can go to customers and saying, hey, we know you're not going to get all these random surcharges. You know that we can actually control our own supply chain. Here's how we set it up. Here's who we buy from. And here's why it's more beneficial to work with us. And the more independents who are doing more stuff on their own, the better they're going to be able to set up and the better future I think they're going to be having as well.
I think I might have told you how Jake's dad, during the big CO2 shortage in August, he owns 2 restaurants in North Conway. He couldn't get CO2 at all. And I was like, hey, Maine Oxygen, because they're getting it from, I think, where Airgas and Pepsi were the 2 restaurant suppliers. And I don't know, it's hard, like those like little like small towns like North Conway that aren't really on any major highway. It's hard to service them. Yeah, it is for sure. And that's the problem, is that so many, other companies out there, not to say anything negative about any of them, because they all do a great job in their own ways, but sometimes they're not interested in those small to medium-sized businesses, to where we step in and can service them well, we can treat them well. And that's where we're really able to be strong, is in that market segment as well. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important too for people to be able to get product because they need it. And that's what's unique about our industry. If somebody goes a week without CO2, they can't brew beer, they can't pour their beer taps, they can't operate. And I've never really been in an industry out there, or worked in an industry where if you don't have this, you're done, you're shut down, it's over. So I think that's something that's really unique, and I take pride in immensely in what we do. Yes, you're literally serving our country every day. Like, you're helping our country run every single day. So also, you spoke of cannabis. Can you just touch on a little bit of like how CO2 is used in cannabis? Yeah, so from my understanding of the cannabis, so there is multiple ways that you can grow the plants. You can grow them outside. You can use open air exchange in an enclosed environment. But a lot of people actually use CO2 during certain times of the day to mimic the natural growth cycle of a plant. And so when you use CO2 and inject it into the plant, you actually get a fuller product and a more denser product. So you actually get more yield when you use CO2. So even though the cost is a little bit higher, you get more product and a better quality of product at the end of the day. And so it's used to mimic, I think it's either from 12 to 16 hours a day they can use it for. They run it during the day, and then at night, I guess it off-gases nitrogen, some other stuff as well. But the whole point of using CO2 is to mimic what the natural process should be outside, but it's in a controlled environment, and you get a better quality of product at the end of the day. Okay. That's great. And we'll probably clip that if you don't mind. Yeah. And also share that. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention is that Maine Oxygen is really big into giving back. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you do that? Yeah. So I'm extremely passionate about charity and working with people, because I was born in Reading, Pennsylvania, grew up in Wyomissing, which is a suburb outside the city. But that's where my dad's from. That's where my grandfather worked. That's where my dad started his business, and tie everything in. But in 2012, the year before I graduated high school, Reading, PA was named the most impoverished city in the country. 50% of the people living in the city were living under the poverty line. And the average family of 4 in 2012 was making $30,000 a year. And so even though I grew up, I wasn't born into a wealthy family. My dad literally started from nothing, worked his butt off, and grew it. And I saw a lot of that happen. And I had so many friends who lived in Reading who were single parent households. Parents couldn't speak English. And I always sat there and I said, listen, I don't want to give a handout. I want to give a hand up. I want to help people and give people the opportunity, if they want a better life, to give them the resources and the tools in order to do so. And so our goal here at Maine Oxy over time is, because right now we donate to animal shelters, different events where we help sponsor the Patrick Dempsey Challenge up here in Maine. For all your viewers who love Grey's Anatomy, he's actually from Lewiston, Maine. So yeah, he's a local heartthrob over here, but we work with that charity. And our goal again is to, how can we help in the communities in which we operate and the communities in which we serve, give families with a less fortunate background a hand up, an ability to have a better life, either through the trades or without the trades. Like something I tell the story all the time. We had a kid who was from a single parent household, and all of his friends went off to school. He didn't want to take on all that debt, so he went to our welding school right here in Auburn.
passed it, and is now at 19 years old making $55,000, $60,000 a year working at Bath Iron Works as a welder. And in the next 4 to 5 years, his goal is to start his own welding business, and he could make $2,500 to $3,000 a week. So when his friends are coming out of school making $45,000, $50,000 a year, he's going to be making 2, 3, 4 times that amount with no debt, and a skill and a trade that he can actually go out there and use. And I think I'm extremely passionate about how can we get more people into the trades, and how can we help families who have a less unfortunate background, give them a hand up so they can live better lives. Because at the end of the day, if all I do is work to make money, that's a pretty shallow life. And I'm more about what can we do to help people. And that is literally my North Star, is that I want to pay off our debts. I want to get debt free. I want to continue to grow, but I also want to be able to give back at the same time.
Beautiful. And how do you think we could get people more involved with the trades?
I think it's just education. Unfortunately, the stigma, quote unquote, was when we were in school, it's like, oh, if you go into the trades or if you do this or you do that, it's because you didn't work hard or you're from this background, which is absurd. My roommate, one of my best friends, he had to go through some addiction issues, rehabbed, but now is a carpenter, is an electrician, and in his late 20s, he's going to be making 6 figures as an electrician. And so I think it's important to go in now and help educate kids and sit there and say, at the high school level, and sit there and say, listen, you don't need to go to college to be successful. You don't need to do this. You don't have to spend $80,000 or $40,000, $50,000 a year. Or in my case, when I was in DC, George Washington was like $65,000 a year for someone to go to school for, to get a political science degree, to go be a staffer on Capitol Hill and make $30,000 a year. Oh, so gosh. It's just trying to educate the kids and sitting there and saying, hey, you take these steps, this is what you could get. And if you take these steps, this is also what comes out of it. I think we push traditional and formal education too much in the United States and not enough of read these books, go get these experiences, go into these trade schools, and just help the younger generation understand what else is out there.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. I relate to that strongly. I'm dyslexic and ADHD. My father is severely dyslexic, way more than I am. And so school was just not something that was for him. Like he was a creative man. He also came from nothing and built Ratterman. But yeah, he taught us like, learn all you can learn, always be curious, ask as many questions as you want, work your butt off, and that will lead you places. And if you want to go to college, you can go to college. And if you don't want to, that's fine, but you need to be working and doing your thing. And he never gave us a handout with money. He just always was there for like support and advice. And I remember getting so much backlash from my different friends, peers, whatever, just that I didn't want to go to college. And I was taking college classes, but only to the ones that I could afford. I never wanted to put myself in debt. And I was saving a ton of money and working 2 jobs my whole way through taking these classes. And by the time I was 22, I was able to buy my first investment property. And they were getting out when they were 23 or 24, just with so much debt. And I just don't understand why it has to be one way or no way. There's so much gray area and so many people are all different. So there's a path for everyone, you know, especially I think like you're saying, like the books, the podcast, like whatever you can do to just make yourself better and make your strong skill sets stronger, you're setting yourself up for success. But anyways, I don't share that often with people. So that's my rant about myself.
No, I love that though, because I think that's so true. And I think it's so hard, especially in our generation, because I remember like freshman year of high school even, and then, oh, Facebook. What's Facebook? I've never even heard of this in my entire life. What's Snapchat? What's Instagram? I don't even know what any of these things are. And so you start using it. And I think we're at that different digital age where you can see what other people are doing and they only post the highlight reels. So at that 18 to 22, I feel like so many people are just trying to do what's popular and to be liked instead of making serious decisions for their lives. And again, a lot of it comes from is that ability to want to be liked, to be a part of that big group. But I just think everything that you can do to break away from that and do your own thing and follow your own heart and your own passions, it's the best decision that you can make at the end of the day. Because I love listening to guys like Bill Burr, who literally was at 35 years old, from like 18 to 35, lived on a mattress because he was a struggling comedian, but he loved every second of it. And he said he would literally live for the moments at comedy clubs where he got a huge standing ovation, where everybody laughed, where he was in the flow. That would get him through a crappy week of waiting tables and doing all that stuff. But because the passion was there and he was excited about it, because he didn't care what anybody else thought. He just kept moving forward, moving forward, and he didn't care if he failed at the end of the day. So I think that speaks volumes to what you were saying, because everyone has that story where, all my friends were questioning me. They wondered why I did that stuff. But at the end of the day, you are where you are. We are where we are because of the choices and the decisions that we made.
Absolutely. I think you need to be like a keynote speaker at one of these conventions, because I am inspired as heck right now. Okay. But also I do want to just touch on your welding school so we can add that in as like a resource for people. I know personally, because I went to a private school outside of Boston for a year in high school. And I personally know 4 people that went to your welding school and have great careers since doing so. So that's still available for people, correct?
Yeah. So you can still go to the Welding School, New England School of Metalwork, go onto the website, and you can go in and look for night classes, look for 3-month-long classes. We have certifications. We have 2 certified welding instructors there. And we also have a blacksmithing school as well, where you can learn to forge iron. They make all different knives, blades. It's really cool what they're able to put together and what they're able to make there. And again, it's just trying to move the trades forward and bring people in so we can help educate them and have better lives. Because we even had 2 employees here that started out in our fill plants and say, hey, I'll work in your fill plant for a year or something like that if you're able to take care of my school. And so we have conversations like that all the time. But yeah, it's something that we're passionate about, that we're excited about. Dan Guerin, the former CEO, now board member, actually works with myself to run the school. And it's a great program. It's a great environment for people to come in and learn.
Amazing. Is there anything else you want to add to this podcast that I maybe have missed, or anything you want to touch on?
No, I obviously really do appreciate the opportunity. Love talking with you. Looking forward to developing our relationship professionally over time. I'm getting to know you at the events and stuff. It'll be a lot of fun. With your husband being from Conway, you guys ever come up, let me know. But yeah, I'm just here. Whatever you want to ask, whatever you want to learn, I'm here to help provide and do what I can.
No, I love that. And I'm definitely going to use you as a resource. Yeah. I'm definitely going to be reaching out to you to just pick your brain for different projects. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for your time today.